6 in the morning at Rawai, and the ice trucks are already backing down toward the water. That's what I wake up to now, not an alarm. Ice, whole blocks of it going down a metal chute into the coolers, this long grinding roar. And underneath it, the long-tail boats out in the shallows knocking their hulls together, and a woman 3 stalls down laughing at something I will never understand. The air at that hour is warm, but it hasn't turned yet. The heat comes around 10, and it comes for you personally. At 6, it's just soft, like the sea breathed on the back of your neck. I walk down and buy a fish, snapper some mornings, squid if the squid looks better. Then I carry it 40 feet to a place with plastic chairs and a fan that stopped oscillating years ago, and they grill it, and I eat it looking at the water with my sandals off. That's a Tuesday. That's not a special day. That's just my Tuesday now. And a little under 2 years ago, I sat on the edge of a bed about 4 miles up the road from that fish stall with my thumb resting on a button on my telephone that would have put me on a plane back to Minnesota. I want to tell you about that night. Not because it's dramatic, it wasn't. I want to tell you because I think there's a fair chance somebody watching this is going to have a night just like it, and I'd rather you heard about mine from a man who came out the other side. But it doesn't mean a thing without the 4 years in front of it. So let me back up. I'm Eugene. Maki. It's a Finnish name. Up where I'm from, about a third of the phone book is Finns, and the other 2/3 are Norwegians who'd argue about it. 64 years old. Duluth, Minnesota. Born there, raised there, buried both my parents there, and I'd have told you at any point in my life that I'd die there too. Up on the hillside above Lake Superior, which isn't a lake in any way you'd recognize. It's an inland ocean with weather of its own. 70 degrees downtown and 41 on the shore, and fog coming over the hill like something spilled. I worked 41 years for a regional grocery chain. Started bagging at 17 so I could put gas in a car I shouldn't have owned. Then carts, then dairy, then produce manager, then assistant, and I ran a store as manager for the last 22 years of it. 60-some employees in the summer, a few less in the winter. People hear grocery store manager and they picture a fella in a tie standing by the registers looking important. What it actually is arithmetic and weather and human beings. I could look at a 5-day forecast on a Wednesday and tell you within a case how much whole milk to bring in, because a snow event means everybody buys milk and bread and nobody buys lettuce. And I knew my shrink figures, that's spoilage, what you throw away, the number that quietly eats a grocery store alive cold, week over week, for 2 decades. That job made me a man who counts things. Keep that in mind. It comes back. Margie worked the bakery counter. Marguerite on the paperwork, but nobody called her that except her mother and a dentist. I was 23 and she was 22, and she had flour on her forearm and she made a joke about my haircut that was, frankly, accurate. We were married 38 years. 2 kids, Carrie, in Minneapolis now with 2 of her own, and Brian, who went out to Seattle and does something with logistics software that has been explained to me maybe 6 times. We were not fancy people. A 100-year-old house on the hill with a porch that needed doing and never got done. The camper up the North Shore. She liked those big paperback mysteries with the raised gold title and read them at a rate that concerned me financially. And I want to be clear, that was a good life. I'm not telling you a sad story about a wasted one. It was good, and then something came and took it apart very slowly. She was 58 when it started. I was 57. It was small at first. It's always small. She put the car keys in the freezer and we both laughed, because who hasn't? She'd tell me a thing on a Sunday, she'd told me Saturday, word for word, same pause in the same spot. She quit driving over to Superior because the bridge got confusing, and I said fine, I'll drive, and didn't think about it again for a month. The one that finally got me was the bread. She was making a cardamom bread, her grandmother's recipe, which she'd made maybe 400 times in her life and could have made in the dark. I came in and she was at the counter with the flour out and the yeast out, everything lined up perfect the way she always did it, and she was just standing there. Not upset, standing. And she looked at me and said, very calm, "Gene, I've got all of it out, I just can't remember what it's for." We went in on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were my late day and I traded it. The neurologist was maybe 40, and she was kind about it. And she used the phrase early onset, and then she used the other word, and I heard both, and I don't remember much of what came after. What I remember is walking out to the parking ramp, and it was already dark at 4:30 in the afternoon, the way it is up there in November. And Margie took my arm going down the stairs, which she'd been doing for years anyway, and she said, "Well, we'll figure it out." And we did figure it out. For 4 years we figured it out. Here's the thing nobody tells you about that disease. The loneliness starts a long time before the funeral. I was 59 when I left the store. I could have hung on a few more years, and probably should have, but there was no version where I ran 60 employees and got Margie through a day. So I gave my notice. They did a thing in the break room with a cake, and a kid from the dairy aisle cried, which I did not handle well. Then I went home and became something else. You learn a whole trade in about 6 weeks. A note on the inside of the front door, the stove knobs off and into a drawer, which shirt she'll accept and which one starts a fight, and that it isn't really a fight, it's fear coming out sideways. You learn to answer the same question 14 times in an evening with the same warm voice on the 14th as the first. And when you fail at that, you go stand in the garage a minute with your hands flat on the workbench. I was with her every hour of every day for 4 years, and I was alone for almost all of it. That's the part I couldn't have explained at the time. She was right there. Next room, same bed, holding my hand at the kitchen table. And somewhere in the second year, I stopped having a person to tell things to. I'd have a thought, some little thing. The neighbor's tree came down, the wild lost in overtime, and I'd open my mouth and close it again. You do that about 4,000 times, and something in you goes quiet and stays quiet. The last stretch we had help. Insurance covered some and we paid the rest, and that's where I met Pim. Was a home health aide. Ty came over in her 20s, married a fella from Cloquet, stayed, small, steady, absolutely unbothered by any of it. She talked to Margie like Margie was still Margie, which sounds small and is not. Most people talk to somebody with that disease like they're talking to a room. She worked nights that last while, and I couldn't sleep, so I'd sit up in the kitchen with her while she did her paperwork. And one of those nights, 3 in the morning, February, 11 below, outside, and the storm windows rattling, she was telling me where she grew up, Phuket, an island in the south of Thailand. Her dad had a boat, and she told me a thing I've never once forgotten. At the morning market at Rawai, you buy your fish yourself, whatever's just off the boats, and carry it 40 feet up the beach, and somebody grills it, and you eat it right there. I said something like, "That sounds all right." And she said, "It's just normal there, Gene. It's not special, it's just Tuesday." That's all it was. A woman homesick out loud at 3 in the morning to a man who couldn't sleep. She didn't sell me anything. No brochure, no cousin's phone number. She went back to her paperwork, and I went back to the storm windows. Margie died in the April. I was 61, she was 62. It was a gentle end, as those go. She wasn't frightened. I was holding her hand, and so was Carrie. Then I did what everybody does. I got very busy for 5 months. There's a tremendous amount of paperwork when somebody dies, and I was grateful for every page. I cleaned the garage. I finally did the porch. And then somewhere in the fall, I ran out of jobs. Empty houses aren't quiet. That's the lie. Mine had a furnace that kicked on with a bang, and ice sliding off the roof in March like a body falling. And there was nobody to say, "Did you hear that too?" Now, the money, because I told you I'm a man who counts things. I was 61, then 62, which means, and I'll say it plainly, because people get this wrong constantly, I was not on Medicare. Medicare is 65. Nobody hands you a thing at 62 except a reduced Social Security check if you ask, and I asked because I'd left the job 2 years early and the savings were the only thing holding the roof up. So, Social Security, taken early and permanently reduced for it, $1,610 a month, plus the pension from the chain, which was a real pension and I was lucky to have it, $1,190 a month, $2,800 total for the rest of my life. Against that, a health plan off the marketplace 3 years to go before Medicare, and a man in his 60s does not go uninsured. $780 a month, with a deductible high enough it wasn't doing much for me, short of catastrophe. Then property taxes and the heat. You want to understand what heating a house in Duluth costs when it's 11 below and the wind's off that lake and the car, and food, and a roof that needed doing inside 3 years, whether I liked it or not. Call it $3,450 a month, honestly counted. That's what I did for a living. $2,800 coming in, about $34.50 going out, $650 a month out of savings, just to sit still in that loud empty house and be sad in it. We had $86,000 left. Sounds like a lot until you do the division, and I did it on the back of a grocery order pad because old habits die hard. 11 years. Broke at 73, and that's if nothing goes wrong. And by 73, something always goes wrong. And then in the spring, when I was 62, I sold the house on the hill. Carrie was relieved and didn't hide it. She'd watched me disappear into that house for 4 years, and I think she was afraid I'd die in it. Brian thought I'd lost my mind and said so on a call that did not go well. I bought a one-way ticket to Phuket for the first week of October. And I'll be honest about my plan, because people always assume there was more of one. My plan was, a woman I liked told me, you can buy a fish and somebody will grill it. That was the whole plan. It took me 31 hours to get there. Duluth to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Doha on the long one, Doha to Bangkok, Bangkok down to Phuket. Somewhere in the middle I stopped being able to tell you what day it was. 2 suitcases and a carry-on with Margie's wedding ring on a chain, because I couldn't wear it and couldn't leave it behind. I'd booked a month in Rawai off a listing on the internet. 19,000 baht, around $575, the short stay rate, and I knew it. The photographs had been taken in daylight by somebody with talent. I landed a little after 8 at night, in the rain, at the tail of the monsoon. And here's the thing about Phuket Airport at night. The moment those doors slide open, the air doesn't feel like air. It has weight. It sits on you like a wet towel. A driver got me down to Rawai for 800 baht, about $24. Found out 3 weeks later, that was roughly double. That's the tuk-tuk and taxi situation on that island. It doesn't go away, it just gets less as you learn. He dropped me at the mouth of a soi that's a side lane pointed up it and drove off. And I stood there with 2 suitcases in the rain on a concrete lane with dogs on it. The room was up, an outside staircase, concrete box, tile floor, which I'd never lived on in my life. A bed with a fitted sheet and no top sheet, you don't want one there, and I didn't know that, so I thought they'd forgotten. A window air conditioner bolted through the wall that made a noise, like a man clearing his throat, and dripped onto the tile in a spot gone dark from years of it. 1 fluorescent tube that took 3 flickers to commit. 2 geckos on the wall by the door, which I now think are fine and did not think were fine that night. And the smell, which I've never been able to describe properly, hot concrete drains something sweet and green under it, frangipani I found out later, cooking oil from down the lane. It's the smell of the whole country to me now. That night it just told me, over and over, you are not where you live. I sat down on the edge of that bed. What came next wasn't a breakdown. I'm not a man who has big scenes. It was more like a set of facts arriving in order. The first fact was that I had not had a conversation in 31 hours. I'd said thank you to 4 flight attendants and Rawai to a driver. That's the total. The second fact was the noise. I don't know where anybody gets the idea a tropical island is quiet. Dogs going at it behind the building. A 2-stroke somebody was revving for no purpose. Bass from a bar on the main road, just close enough. And then the rain came onto the metal roof, and it wasn't a sound so much as a wall. And the third fact, the one that got me, was that the room was hot and the air conditioner was working. Both true at once. I ran the arithmetic on that, because I'm the arithmetic guy. And the arithmetic said, this is the good version. This thing is doing its job. This is what fixed feels like here. And I thought, very clearly, what in God's name have you done? I had sold Marguerite's house. The porch I finally fixed, I'd fixed for a stranger. Her cardamom recipe was in a box in a storage place in Hermantown. I was 62, sitting on a rubber mattress on the other side of the planet listening to a dog fight because a nice woman from Cloquet told me about a fish market at 3 in the morning. So I got out my phone. I had Signal. One thing that island has is Signal, and I opened the airline app and did it calmly and methodically, the way I'd do a purchase order. Phuket to Bangkok, Bangkok to Doha, Doha to Minneapolis. 2 days out, because the next day's was sold out. 91,000 baht, roughly $2,760 one way at that notice. Nearly a month's income. That's the price of being a coward, I thought, and about what I'd have guessed. And I put my thumb on it. I'd like to tell you something turned in me right then. some voice, or a memory of Margie, or the sun coming up over the water, something with a bow on it. That's not what happened. What happened was stupider and more useful, and it's the reason I'm still here. Throughs, I sat with my thumb on that button, and a flat, boring little question came up out of the back of my head in the voice I used doing the schedule on a Sunday night. Fly home to where? That's it. That was the whole thing. Fly home to where, Gene? There was no house. I'd sold it. There was a storage unit in Hermantown and Carrie's spare room where I'd be the sad grandpa on the futon with 2 suitcases and no plan, $2,700 lighter, telling people I'd tried it and it wasn't for me. And I understood, not felt, understood, the way you understand a number that doesn't work, that I was not homesick. You can't be homesick without a home. What I was scared and filthy and awake for 31 hours in a hot room. So I put the phone face down on the mattress. About a minute later, the power went out on the whole lane. The air conditioner quit, the tube quit, and the rain got very loud because there was nothing else. I sat in the pitch dark in the wet heat on the edge of that bed for 10 or 12 minutes and did not move and did not think about much of anything. Then it all came back on at once, everything humming. I got up. The shower was a pipe in the corner with no curtain and no hot water, and I stood under it, and it was the best thing that had happened to me in 4 years. I lay down and slept 11 hours. That's the night, that's the whole night. I didn't beat anything, I just got too tired to leave. I woke at 11 the next morning to somebody's rooster and a great deal of light, and I did the only thing I could think of, which was walk down to the water and find out whether the woman from Cloquet had been telling the truth. She had. The Rawai seafront in the middle of the day is a working road. Longtails pulled up on the sand with their bows wrapped in colored cloth. Those are for the spirits. I learned later, and you don't touch them. Trucks, ice everywhere. A line of stalls with the day's catch laid out, and behind them places with plastic chairs where they'll cook whatever you just bought for about 100 baht a plate, $3. I stood in front of all that a while like a man who'd wandered into the wrong building. And the whole first week was like that. I want to be truthful about that first month, because the internet is full of people who arrive somewhere and are transformed by lunch, and that is not how it goes. The heat was not a joke. I'm from a place where 35 degrees in March is shirt sleeves weather. I lost 9 pounds in 3 weeks without trying, and I don't recommend the method. I learned to do everything outdoors before 10 or after 5 and to treat the middle of the day as something survived indoors, which is exactly how people there have always done it. And it took me a month to stop reading that as laziness. It isn't laziness. It's competence. And the language. I'd read before I went that you can get by on English in Phuket, and that's about 1/3 true, which is the most dangerous amount of true there is. In the tourist stretch, at the hospital, at the bigger hotels, yes. 2 lanes inland, where I actually lived, no. And Thai isn't a language you pick up by standing near it. It's tonal. The same syllable is 5 different words depending on whether your voice goes up, down, sits flat, or does a thing I still can't do. I said the word for close when I meant far for 2 months, to a great deal of patient amusement. What cracked it open wasn't a class. It was that I got tired of paying tuk-tuk money. 3rd week, I bought a second-hand motorbike, a little Honda automatic 30,000 baht, about $909, cash, from a fella down on Soi Sai Yuan named Chai, who fixes bikes out of a shed with a tin roof and a dog that lives under the bench. I could not start it, genuinely could not get it going, standing right there, having just handed him $900, because you've got to squeeze the brake before the starter and nobody told me. Chai didn't laugh. He came over and put his hand over my hand on the brake lever and pressed, and the thing fired, and he said, "Okay?" And I said, "Okay." That was the entire conversation, and it was the first time anybody on that island had touched me. I went back to that shed a lot. Oil, tires, a mirror I broke on a wall. His English was 40 words and my Thai was 9, and somewhere in the 2nd month we were having what I'd call conversations. He'd hold up a part and say a price, and I'd make a face, and he'd laugh and say the same price. He taught me Sawasdi crap and Kop Kun crap for thank you. And this is the one that mattered. He taught me to why properly, the little bow with your hands together, and more importantly, when not to. You don't why a child. You don't why the woman selling you a fish. I'd been doing it at everybody like a tourist in a movie, and he gently sorted me out. And I want to name the other honest thing about that month, which is that I was still completely alone. Maybe 6 exchanges longer than 4 sentences in 30 days. I ate nearly every meal by myself. I messaged Pim once to say she'd been right about the fish. She sent back something lovely and a photo of her kids, and that was that. Nobody was waiting for me. There was no welcoming committee. Thai people are warm, genuinely, but it isn't American warm. There's a real reserve to it, Krang Jai, they call it. A considerate restraint that keeps its distance until you've been around long enough to be a fixture instead of a visitor. You don't get adopted. You get gradually noticed. Now, the counting. By week 3, the manager and me had woken up, and I was doing what I'd done every Sunday night for 22 years, sitting down with a pad and getting the actual numbers instead of the imagined ones. Rent was the first real one. That 19,000 baht was a short-stay rate. I walked the lanes behind Rawai and Nai Harn for 2 weeks, and a proper one-bedroom on a 12-month lease tiled, air conditioning that works, a little balcony. 10 minutes from the water on the bike ran 22,000 baht a month, $667. More than people will tell you Thailand costs, because that's Phuket. It's an island. It's the most expensive place in the country to live, and anybody telling you otherwise is quoting Chiang Mai prices. Food I tracked for 4 straight weeks on the pad, every item. Cooking at home most nights, plus eating out 5 or 6 times a week, came to about 16,000 baht, right around $485. Petrol for the bike was almost nothing. 200 baht filled it. And I sat on that little balcony in the last week of my month doing the addition twice, the way I always did, and the whole thing landed around 65,000 baht a month, all in, right about $1,980, against 2,800 coming in. I put the pen down. Because in Duluth, that same arithmetic came out $650 a month in the red, and here it came out 800 some in the black, and the difference between those two numbers isn't really money. The difference between those two numbers is whether a man gets to stop bracing. I signed the 12-month lease on the last Thursday in October. Signing a lease is the easy part. Staying legally is the part nobody puts in the videos. I'd come in on a tourist entry which gives you a stamp and a clock, and the route that suits a man my age is this. You don't apply for the retirement visa from home at all. The one you apply for from your own country, the OA, has a mandatory health insurance requirement attached, and the coverage they'll accept, and the amount varies by consulate. Verify it yourself. Don't take it off a stranger on the internet, including me. The other way is you come in on a tourist entry and convert it inside the country to a non-O, then extend a year at a time on retirement grounds. Same money requirement, but not bound up in that insurance mandate, though a few local offices have started asking. For most people past 60, that's the sensible road. It isn't a trick, it's the ordinary door, and most people never find it. Either way, you've got to be 50 or over, which at 62 I was, comfortably. And either way, you show them the money. 800,000 baht in a Thai bank in your name, about $24,000, seasoned a couple of months before you apply, sent in from abroad, and it has to genuinely stay put. You can't park it for the photograph and yank it back out. It comes down over the year and you rebuild it before you renew. The alternative is 65,000 baht a month of documented income, about $1,970. Mine would have cleared it, but proving foreign income the way they want it proved was a headache I didn't need. So I used the deposit, which meant that in November I wired $24,000 of marguerites and my money into a bank in a country where I couldn't read the sign over the door. That was harder than the flight. I sat in that branch in Chalong with a form in front of me in 2 alphabets, thinking about the pair of us at a kitchen table in 1987, arguing over whether we could afford a second-hand chest freezer. Then there's the 90-day report and the TM30, the address registration your landlord is meant to file when you move in. Mine hadn't. That cost me a morning. Immigration in Phuket town. I got there at 7:15 because Barry told me to, and Barry was right. Barry's an Englishman, from Hull, 22 years on that island. Big fella, permanently sunburnt, opinions about everything. I met him at a coffee place near the Rawai Pier because we were the only 2 in there over 60. And he gave me the best advice I got that first year, and it wasn't about paperwork. He said, "You've found me, which is fine, but don't go making me your whole life." There's blokes here 20 years whose entire existence is 4 Englishmen and a bar with a dartboard. They live in Thailand and they've never once been inside a Thai person's house. Don't do that. Learn the numbers, learn some words, and go be somewhere that isn't full of us. That landed. It is very easy, when everything around you is hard to read, to sit among the people who speak your language and never get up again. But that immigration morning, Barry sat with me 3.5 hours on plastic chairs with a numbered ticket, and he'd brought photocopies I didn't know I needed. And when the officer wanted a document I did not have, Barry produced it out of a folder like a card trick. I came out at 11 with a stamp in my passport and sat on the steps in the sun, feeling about the way I did the day my daughter got her license. So here's the whole thing laid out because I said I'd give you the real numbers. Coming in each month, $1,610 from Social Security, taken early at 62 and permanently reduced for it, $1,190 from the grocery pension, $2,800. Going out each month, what it actually runs, not what I hoped. Rent, 22,000 baht, $667. Electric, water, and the aircon, which is most of it, 4,000 baht, about 120. Food, cooking and eating out, both 16,485. The bike, petrol, servicing, and a grab when it's really coming down, $3,091. Phone and internet, 1,300 baht, under $40. Health, 9,000 baht, $273, which I'll break out in a minute. And everything else, clothes, the barber, a beer, visa fees, presents home. A few nights away, 10,000 baht, about 303. 65,300 baht a month, $1,979 at 33 baht to the dollar. 2,800 in, 1979 out, $821 a month left over. Just shy of $10,000 a year going the right direction for the first time since I was 57 years old. Now the health line, because that's where people get it wrong. I'm 64 now and I am not on Medicare because Medicare is 65 and not a day sooner. What I've got is private insurance bought out here, about $1,950 a year. At my age, call it $165 a month, and it climbs steeply every year from here. And by 75, it's a hard expense, and for some people, hard to get at all. Anything already wrong with you when you sign up, it generally won't cover. The rest of that 9,000 baht is what I hand over at a counter. A routine doctor's visit runs 1,000 baht, about $30, seen inside 20 minutes. Bangkok Hospital Phuket, for anything real. There's Siri Roge as well. The honest caveat, for routine care, Phuket is excellent and cheap, but for something genuinely serious, a big cardiac event, a cancer, the referral centers are up in Bangkok. You plan for that, and keep the money and insurance to get yourself on a plane. One last dull thing, because it catches people. I'm American. I file a U.S. tax return every year for the rest of my life, no matter where I live. And with 800,000 baht in a Thai bank, well over $10,000, I file the foreign account report too. Social Security, under the treaty between the two countries, is taxable by the United States only, not by Thailand. Past 180 days a year, you're a Thai tax resident, and there are rules about money you bring in. I pay a woman in Bangkok once a year to tell me I'm fine, and you should do the same rather than take tax advice off a video. Legal, solvent, 800 and change a month in the black. And still, most nights that first winter, eating supper by myself. The money problem got solved in about 4 months. The other one took a year, and I couldn't have made it go faster. Because here's what nobody warns you about belonging. There's no move you can make. You can't buy it, you can't force it, and the harder you push, the more skillfully Thai people get out of your way. All you can do is show up in the same place at the same time long enough that you stop being an event. Which is what I did, not from wisdom, but because I like a routine. 22 years of opening a store will do that to a man. Up at 5:30, down to Rawai on the bike, buy a fish, eat it. Home by 8 ahead of the heat. Sleep through the worst of the afternoon like a sensible person. Out again at 5. And the stall I ended up at 3 or 4 mornings a week, every week, was Da's. Da is somewhere in her 50s and does not suffer fools, and for 2 months I don't believe she registered me as a distinct human being. I was a farang, that's just the word for a Westerner. It isn't an insult, and farang come and go, so there's no sense learning them. Month 3, she started putting my change into my hand instead of onto the tray. Month 5, she said Eugene, she'd got it off my bank card, which I'd fumbled and it came out Eugene, and I have been Eugene on that beach ever since, and I like it better than my actual name. Month 6, she started telling me which fish not to buy. That's a real promotion. She'd tap the one I was pointing at, shake her head, slide me 2 along. She was never once wrong. And here's the morning it turned, and I know how small it's going to sound. It was February, the good season down there, dry and gorgeous, and I'd had a bad patch 4 days. I hadn't gone anywhere. It was around Margie's birthday, that's all. It comes and goes and doesn't announce itself, and I stayed in with the air conditioning on and ate out of the 7-Eleven on the corner. 5th morning I went down. There was a line at Daw's stall, 4 or 5 deep, locals mostly. I got in behind them, and she saw me from 20 feet off, and she put her hand up, and she waved me straight past the whole line, which mortified me. I'm from Minnesota, we would sooner die. And she reached into the cooler under the counter and brought out a snapper that was already wrapped and set it down in front of me. And she said, in English, which she almost never used with me, 4 day, where you go? I started to say something about being busy. She wasn't interested. She pushed the fish at me. And then she said, and I'll get this slightly wrong, because I was not in great shape, she said, you come, I keep. She'd been setting one aside. On the days I didn't come, she'd been putting a fish under the counter. I stood on a beach road in the sun at 63 years old, holding a wrapped snapper and could not get a word out, and Da had 5 people waiting, so she made a little shooing motion at me and got back to work, which was exactly the right thing to do. I ate it 40 feet away. I've eaten a fish off that stall maybe 300 times since. That was the hinge. Not the beach, not the money. A woman noticing a quiet foreigner had gone missing for 4 days and putting a fish under a counter about it. Things opened up after that the way they do. Chai had me over to his sister's for a meal, which is a bigger thing than an American reads it as, and I sat on the floor and ate items I could not identify and was the evening's entertainment in a way I did not mind. There's a Wednesday coffee crowd now, Barry, an Australian woman named Trish, a retired German, and lately the young Thai couple who run the place. I go up to Wat Chalong most weeks, the big temple on the island. I'm not a Buddhist and I'm not shopping for a religion, but there's something about standing in that heat, listening to the bells, that puts a man back in order. Now the honest parts, because I promised. The monsoon is real. May through October it comes down like the sky's got a grudge. The sea off the west coast turns dangerous. The red flags go up. And every year somebody who thinks he's a strong swimmer drowns off Karen. Mold gets into your shoes. And there's a stretch in September when the light goes gray for a week. And I'd be lying if I said the Duluth in me didn't recognize it. The tuk-tuk pricing never stops being irritating, though I ride a bike, so mostly I've opted out. And the grandchildren. That's the one with no fix. Carrie's 2, Nora and Wes. Nora's 11 now, and I do a video call every Sunday morning my time. They're Saturday evening. And I've watched a girl grow up inside a rectangle. She's stopped being able to sit still for it, which is normal and healthy and stings anyway. I go back a month every other year, and it does not fix it. Some things you don't fix. You decide what you're paying, and then you pay it without complaining. And Brian. Brian, who'd told me I'd lost my mind, went cool on me for 14 months. Short calls. Then he came out, the October after my first year, and happened to hit the Vegetarian Festival, 9 days of Phuket, doing something with no equivalent anywhere on earth. Everything in white. Processions out of the Chinese shrines in the old town. Firecrackers by the crate until you can't hear. Street food the length of Thalang Road. It comes off the old Hokkien Chinese side of that island, which people don't know about. Phuket's got a whole Sino-Portuguese old town, shop houses in pastel colors, nothing like the beach. And we stood in that street in the smoke, and my son looked over at me and said, "Okay, that's all, okay." Which from Brian is a paragraph. I'm 64 now. I've been on this island a little under 2 years. Let me tell you what a day is, because the day is the actual answer to all of it. Up at 5:30, down to Rawai in the dark, just going blue on the bike, past the monks doing the morning alms round with their bowls. You see them every day and never stop seeing them. fish from Dawes, and some mornings we manage 6 sentences and some none, and both are fine. Eat looking at the water, home before the heat gets serious. Wednesdays, coffee with Barry and Trish. Fridays I go up to old Phuket town and eat moo hong, a slow braised pork belly, a Phuket thing you won't get right anywhere else, at a place on Debook Road with 6 tables. Sundays, the call to Minneapolis. Every so often Chai has me out to something. I sleep. That's the one I'd underline for anybody my age. 4 years of listening for Margie getting out of bed, then a year of listening to a furnace in an empty house. I did not sleep through the night once in 5 years. Here I sleep 8 hours like I've been hit with a board. My blood pressure came down enough that the doctor asked what I'd changed, and I said everything, and he thought that was very funny. And there's a decision in front of me this year I want to lay out honestly, because it's the exact thing Americans out here get wrong. I turn 65 next year, which means Medicare. And Medicare does not cover me here. Not one baht of it. That is the single most important thing an American retiring abroad needs to have straight, and I hear it wrong constantly. Medicare is for care inside the United States. Sit in a hospital in Phuket with a Medicare card in your wallet, and what you've got is a card. So the question is whether I sign up for Part B and pay the premium anyway, $202.90 a month this year, and it resets annually, so check the current figure rather than take mine. For that I'd get nothing where I actually live. What I'd get is coverage for the month, the year I'm in Minnesota, and I'd dodge the late enrollment penalty, a permanent 10% for every year you skipped, for the rest of your life, if you ever come back and need it. I'm going to pay it. I'm 64, healthy, and I intend to be here another 20 years. But the private insurance I buy out here gets more expensive and harder to hold on to every year past 75, and if I'm 82 and something serious happens and I need to go home for it, I'd like that door still open. $200 a month is the price of the door staying open. My surplus drops from $821 a month to about $620. I can carry that. It's a trade, not a free lunch, and nothing out here is a free lunch. That's what 2 years has taught me. Not that Thailand is paradise, it isn't. It's hot, the paperwork never ends, the language is genuinely hard, and I'm still bad at it. My granddaughter is growing up 8,000 miles away, and I live on an island that costs more than most of this country. And anybody telling you a person can live a decent life here on $500 a month is selling you something that's a fantasy, and believing it is how people end up stranded and ashamed. What I live on, comfortably but not lavishly, in the most expensive part of Thailand, is right around $2,000 a month. What it is possible, which back home it had stopped being. I think about that room a lot, the dripping air conditioner and the dogs and the rain on the tin and the flight app open on my phone. And I've made my peace with there being nothing noble in me that night. I didn't stay because I was brave, or because I heard my wife's voice, or because I had faith. I stayed because I asked myself where exactly I thought I was flying home to. There wasn't an answer, and I was too tired to sit with the question. But I've come to think that's how most of it works. You don't usually get a sign. You get one lousy night where the only thing you manage is to not make it worse, and you go to sleep, and it turns out that was enough. And 2 years later, you're standing on a beach at 6 in the morning arguing about a snapper with a woman who calls you Eugene. Margie would have been unbearable about this place. She'd have had the whole soy organized inside a month and learned the language properly because she was better at people than I ever was. I talk to her about it on the bike sometimes. I don't think anybody's listening. It's a habit, and I'm keeping it. If you're sitting somewhere tonight with the arithmetic not working and a house that's gone quiet, I'm not going to tell you to sell everything and get on a plane. I'd be a fool to from here. What I'd tell you is that the counting is the part you can start today. Get the real number for what you're spending and the real number for what a place actually costs, not what some fella on the internet says. Then set the two side by side and see whether there's a life hiding in the gap. There was one hiding in mine. Took me 62 years and one bad night in a hot room to go find it. Before I let you go, one last thing. If you've got the same itch I had, wondering whether the numbers could ever work for somebody like you, there's a free thing down in the description worth 10 minutes. The Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit, it's called. I didn't make it, and I'm not selling you a thing. It's a straight self-check that's every bit as willing to talk you out of this as into it, and a worksheet where you run your own numbers, city by city, the way I ran mine on the back of a grocery pad. Costs you nothing. And if it tells you to stay right where you are, that's an honest answer too. That's all I've got. Take care of yourself.